In choosing a hymn for our wedding, Terry and I were aware of the Presbyterian heritage of my grandmother and of the Uniting Church where we were getting married. While we weren't quite going to go full tartan, we did choose Be Thou My Vision. Based on a 6th century Irish poem attributed to Dallan Forgail, the hymn was translated by Mary Byrne in 1905 and versified by Eleanor Hull in 1912. It is a rousing, Scottish, beautiful hymn. It sits well in the voice with strong imagery. Of course, that's also what makes it tricky. Bearing a faith that longs for peace and commits us to peacemaking, how can we sing the Battleshield verse? Others must feel the same way, as very few of the recordings on YouTube include the Battleshield verse. The verse feels too warlike, with all its talk of swords and shields, fighting and high towers, and calling God power of my power, seems a bit too aggressive to be genuinely devotional. Power of my power? Who talks like that except someone spoiling for a fight? Much better to give it a miss. One can see the point of those who leave it out, especially in our day when we've had more than enough of the horror of war. Seeing the images coming to us from Afghanistan is confronting. Even the threat of modern warfare has definitely taken the shine off any talk of glory or honour in wars. We see on screens the brutal reality of violence and destruction. And we know that Christians should be modelling lives of peace and forgiveness. Paul says that the Lord's servants must not be quarrelsome in 2 Timothy. And James tells us that the wisdom which is from above and which must inspire us is pure and peaceable, gentle, open to reason, and full of mercy. It is sown in peace by those who make peace. A warlike Christian is almost a contradiction in terms. Yet, peace has a cost. Sometimes the cost is physical or material, and sometimes the cost is mental or spiritual. The cost of trying to be free of COVID involves all of us sacrificing some freedoms for the sake of the common good. Our peace is not just personal, it is also communal. To be people truly at peace, we need to learn habits that prioritise responsibilities and relationships with others. Last year, when I was part of the health response team at Westmead, I would see the health staff donning their PPE, personal protective equipment, and the masks and gloves and full body aprons reminded me of the sacrifices people make when they put on each piece. Paul speaks of our warfare waged with spiritual weapons, in which we can destroy strongholds and take captives. And he speaks repeatedly of the armour and weapons we must strap on for our combat. Paul's metaphor implies a fight where our enemies are less likely to be flesh and blood targets, but spiritual enemies of darkness, temptation, fear, and any of those things that distract us from peace. The shield on our arm is not made of wood and metal, but is the shield of faith. The sword in our hand is not a blade sharpened to shed blood, but the sword of the Spirit, which is the proclamation of the gospel. There is a time to use these weapons to speak the truth. This is not about using every possible occasion to give our opinions. The wisdom writer reminds us There is a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And sometimes an eloquent silence can speak more loudly than many words. When we do speak, it is valuable to be able to say where we got our information so we do not get caught up in cycles of sharing fake news. Sometimes it's not a matter of arguing, but of defending truth when truth is challenged or under attack. It is a matter of discernment in the moment. Is now the time to speak up? Would my silence in this moment be a guilty silence, born of selfish concern for my popularity or safety? The purpose of sharing enlightening truth is not to win an argument, but to banish darkness in a spirit of love and care. It may be better to lose the argument if by doing so one may win the heart of the person. Peter gives specific instructions to us about how to speak at that time, when we make our defence and give an account for the hope that is within us. We must do so with gentleness and reverence, keeping our conscience clear. If we feel ourselves becoming agitated or angry, if we keep interrupting our opponent, if we keep losing our internal peace, then we're doing it all wrong. Sometimes we must speak up, but at other times we need to focus on being polite and calm. At all times we need to be polite and calm. Here is a handy rule. If we feel ourselves losing our inner peace or becoming angry, maybe it's the time to shut up and keep silent. Communities of Christians need those who will defend their faith when it is under attack. Everyone may be sometimes called upon to give an account for the hope that is within them, but not everyone is called upon for this specialised ministry of defence. Those who were called to this ministry in the past were given the name the apologists, from the Greek apologia, meaning defence. Those fulfilling this task expose themselves to certain dangers. But the task must be undertaken today nonetheless, often by clergy, part of whose job it is to defend the flock from wolves. That's why a battleshield and a sword are necessary, and why one looks for a soul's shelter and a high tower. Critics who would drag us down can feel ferocious and unrelenting. When we ask the ruler of all and the Lord of our hearts to be our vision, we need all the gifts available to us. For many years I felt embarrassed to evangelize or share faith. I was ashamed that so much of the evangelism of younger days had felt manipulative, coercive, threatening. There used to be a turn or burn approach that I had come to think of as spiritually abusive. Then, over a 14-year period, Terry and I visited Thailand every second year. Every time, people would ask me about faith, about Jesus, about God. I didn't initially look to have these conversations, but eventually we noticed a pattern. We learned how to explain our very imperfect faith experiences to people who did not have experiences of church or Jesus, but did have experiences and questions about spirituality and religion. We learned that people longed to have these conversations and would really enjoy the opportunity to sit and talk. I learnt that wearing a cross or a name badge when visiting in a hospital or attending a public event gave other people permission to ask me about faith or about Jesus. Wearing my collar sometimes acts like an invitation to have a conversation about how faith might influence thinking. These days, a sign of caring for others is the wearing of a mask. It is our present-day battleshield. We wish we did not need it, but perhaps we can wear it both as a defence and as a blessing. Rev Dr. Richard Bott, moderator of the United Church of Canada, wrote this prayer. a prayer as I put on my mask. Creator, as I prepare to go into the world, help me to see the sacrament in the wearing of this cloth. Let it be an outward sign of an inward grace, a tangible and visible way of living love for my neighbours, as I love myself. Christ, since my lips will be covered, uncover my heart, that people would see my smile in the crinkles around my eyes. Since my voice will be muffled, help me to speak clearly, not only with my words but also with my actions. Holy Spirit, as the elastic touches my ears, remind me to listen carefully and full of care to all of those I meet. May this simple cloth be a shield and banner, and each breath that it holds be filled with your love. In your name and in that love, I pray, may it be so.